The crash of $10,000 worth of crystal was quieter than my sister's scream, a stop faking for attention. She had just shoved me out of my wheelchair, leaving me bleeding in a puddle of champagne and broken glass in front of the city's elite. But while my parents worried more about the stained carpet, someone in that crowd knew the truth about the night I lost my legs. The truth is, my sister didn't just push me today. She destroyed my life 3 years ago just to save her own skin. The crash of $10,000 worth of vintage reserve and hand-cut crystal against the polished limestone was muffled by the sudden, suffocating silence that followed. For a heartbeat, the entire Aspen Ridge Summit Club held its collective breath. Then came the scream. It wasn't mine, it was hers. Sloane was standing over me, her face a mask of manufactured outrage, shrieking that I had ruined her aesthetic. My wheelchair, a custom-fitted titanium frame that cost more than a mid-sized sedan, lay on its side, one wheel spinning with a soft, rhythmic clicking. I was sprawled on the floor, the icy seep of champagne soaking into my silk dress, mingling with the warm, metallic slide of blood from my forearm. I tried to push myself up, but my palms slipped on the wet stone. I couldn't feel my legs. But then again, I hadn't felt them in years. Looking up at my sister, seeing the unadulterated venom in her eyes, I realized the terrifying truth. This wasn't a stumble. It wasn't a clumsy accident. She had tipped me. To understand why my own flesh and blood would shove me into a pyramid of glass in front of 200 of Colorado's elite, you have to understand the atmosphere of that room 30 minutes prior. The Aspen Ridge Summit Club isn't just a venue, it's a fortress of the unattainable. The walls are paneled in reclaimed oak that costs more than my annual salary, and the floor-to-ceiling windows look out over the jagged, unforgiving Rockies that feel less like a view and more like a warning. The theme of the engagement gala was a glacier and gold, ethereal, pristine, and obscenely expensive. I was the only blemish on the design. I had rolled in wearing the required ivory silk, my chair a matte black shadow beneath me. I'd spent 3 hours polishing the frame, trying to make it look like a piece of jewelry rather than a medical necessity. It hadn't worked. From the moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. It wasn't the usual pity I was used to. It was sharp, jagged hostility. A woman in a gold lame gown actually pulled her husband away as I passed, whispering behind her hand as if I were a common street beggar. A waiter steered his tray in a wide arc around me, not out of courtesy, but as if my condition were contagious. I saw Julian, Sloane's fiancé, standing near the bar. He caught my eye, then looked away with a jerk of his head, his jaw tight with something that looked suspiciously like shame. I retreated to a corner near the balcony doors, trying to make myself small. That's when I heard it. The whisper drifted over from a cluster of Sloane's social media friends, pitched just loud enough to be intentional. "Can you believe she brought that thing?" One of them hissed, gesturing with a crystal flute. "Sloane told me she walks around her penthouse just fine." "It's sick, doing this for attention at her sister's engagement," another murmured, nodding sagely. "Sloane is a saint for humoring her." My hands tightened on the rims of my wheels. The room suddenly felt glacial. Faking it. The words bounced around my skull, colliding with the very real presence of the 3 titanium screws embedded in my T10 vertebrae. I looked across the ballroom at Sloane. She was holding court in the center of the room, radiant in gold sequins, laughing and touching arms, the perfect image of a bride-to-be. She caught my gaze. She didn't smile, and she didn't wave. She simply looked at me with a flat, cold assessment, like a director noticing a prop that was out of place. I should have left. Any rational person would have turned around and wheeled right out the door. But I stayed frozen, trapped in the invisible cage my family had built for me long before I lost the use of my legs. In the ecosystem of our family, Sloane was the sun, and the rest of us were merely debris caught in her gravity. Growing up, I was the designated shock absorber. If Sloane was volatile, it was because I was too demanding. If she failed, it was because I hadn't supported her. If she was cruel, it was rebranded as a passion or a stress. My parents, Arthur and Madeline, didn't just enable her, they curated her reality. They rebranded her toxicity as a high standards and my silence as a loyalty. I had been conditioned, layer by layer and year by year, to believe that absorbing her damage was my primary purpose. Keeping the peace was worth any price, even my own dignity. So, I sat in my corner and listened to strangers discuss my fraudulent paralysis. I said nothing. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and told myself it was just one night. Just one more night of being the good sister. Just one more night of enduring the unendurable to keep the family portrait perfect. I didn't know then that the price of my silence was about to become astronomical. I didn't know that endurance was a game I had already lost. Sloane began to move toward me, the crowd parting for her as if by command. She wasn't walking, she was stalking. She held a bottle of champagne in one hand like a bludgeon, her eyes locked not on me, but on the black metal frame that dared to exist in her white and gold fantasy. "Elena," she said, her voice loud and clear, carrying across the silent ballroom. "We need to move you. You're ruining the shot." She gestured toward the photographer, who shifted his weight, looking profoundly uncomfortable. "Just stand up for the photo, Elena. For 2 minutes. Stop being such a martyr." The room went dead. The whispers died out. Every pair of eyes was on me, waiting for the fraud to be exposed. "Sloane," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I can't. You know I can't. I know you're a liar." She screamed, her carefully maintained facade finally splintering. "I know you walk when you think no one is looking. You're doing this to spite me because you've always been jealous. Get up." She lunged, grabbing the handles of my chair. "Get up." She shoved, putting her entire weight into it. Gravity took over. The world tilted at an impossible angle. I saw the edge of the limestone table, the pyramid of crystal, and then a kaleidoscope of shattering light. Pain detonated in my shoulder, my arm, my face. I was on the floor, wet, bleeding, and utterly exposed. "Look what you did!" Sloane shrieked. She stood over me, pointing a manicured finger as if I were a dog that had ruined the rug. "Look what you did to my party." My parents rushed over. Arthur and Madeline, the master architects of this dysfunction. My mother gasped, but she didn't kneel. She didn't touch me. Her eyes were fixed on the champagne soaking into the white wool of the rug. "Oh God, the carpet. Arthur, get a towel. It's going to stain." "Get up, Elena," my father hissed. His face was a deep, mottled purple, radiating embarrassment. "Stop making a scene. Get back in the chair." I tried to push myself up, but my hands kept slipping in the blood and wine. I had no leverage. I felt like a turtle on its back, helpless, surrounded by giants who were more concerned with the upholstery than my spine. She threw herself. Sloane yelled to the room, tears beginning to stream down her face. Perfect, practiced tears. She did it on purpose. She's unstable. Then, a shadow fell over me. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't Julian. A woman in a dark navy silk gown knelt on the wet floor, heedless of the glass or the wine. She placed 2 firm, steady hands on either side of my head. Her grip was iron. "Don't move," she commanded. Her voice was low, calm, and terrifyingly authoritative. "Do not attempt to move your head." I looked up into the eyes of Dr. Diane Mercer, the chief of trauma surgery. She was the woman who had painstakingly put me back together 3 years ago. I hadn't seen her since my last follow-up. I hadn't even realized she was on the guest list. She looked up at my sister, then at my parents. Her eyes were dark, burning with a cold, clinical fury. "You," she said to Sloane, her voice cutting through the hysteria like a scalpel. "Step back. Now." Sloane blinked, stunned by the tone. "Who do you think you are?" "She's my sister. She's faking this." Dr. Mercer didn't flinch. She kept my head steady, her thumbs pressing gently against my jawline to stabilize my cervical spine. "I am the surgeon who rebuilt her T10 vertebrae," Dr. Mercer said, her voice projecting to the very back of the room. "I am the one who scraped the bone fragments off a spinal cord. And if you say one more word to her, I will personally see to your ruin." The silence that followed was absolute. "You're lying," Sloane whispered, though her voice wavered. "Call 911, Dr. Mercer ordered, looking directly at Julian. "Tell them we have a spinal trauma patient involved in an assault. Request a police presence." "Assault?" My father sputtered. "Now, wait a minute, Diane. It was an accident. Elena she slipped." "I saw her push her," Dr. Mercer said. She looked at my father with the kind of disdain usually reserved for a biological hazard. "And I'm going to make sure the police know exactly what I saw." She looked down at me, her expression softening by a fraction. "I've got you, Elena," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. Just breathe." For the first time in 3 years, lying in a puddle of vintage champagne and my own blood, I felt safe. Someone had finally stepped between me and the monsters. My parents immediately shifted into damage control. "Diane," my father said, adopting his most persuasive boardroom voice. "Let's be reasonable. We're all friends here." It was a stumble. "Elena is she's a little clumsy sometimes." "Clumsy?" Dr. Mercer repeated the word as if it were a foreign object. "Arthur, I just watched your daughter physically assault a paraplegic woman. That isn't clumsy. That is criminal." "That is criminal," Dr. Mercer said. "Criminal?" Madeline shrieked. "How dare you? Sloane is the victim here. Look at her dress. Look at her party." "I'm looking," Dr. Mercer replied calmly. "And frankly, Madeline, I'm unimpressed." Sloane, realizing the tide was turning, decided to play her final card. She threw herself onto the nearest pristine sofa, sobbing with theatrical intensity. "She's lying," she wailed. "She's always been jealous of me. She's been faking this entire time just to torture us. Ask anyone. Ask Julian." All eyes turned to Julian. He was standing near the shattered crystal, looking deathly pale. He looked at Sloane, sobbing in her gold sequins, and then he looked at me, lying in the wreckage. "Julian, tell them." Sloane demanded. "Tell them she walks around her penthouse when no one is watching." Julian opened his mouth, closed it, and then said quietly, "I've never seen her walk." Sloane stopped crying instantly. Her face went cold. What? I'm taking the side of reality, Julian said. You looked sick, Sloane. I saw you push her. I saw you grab the chair and tip it. You traitor! Sloane screamed. Dr. Mercer ignored the domestic drama. She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving with clinical precision. I'm accessing Elena's medical records right now because, unlike the people in this room, I actually care about the facts. She scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward the silent ballroom. Right here, she said, her voice projecting to the back of the room. Patient: Elena. Date of surgery: October 14th, 3 years ago. Procedure: T10 and T11 spinal fusion and laminectomy. Surgeon: Dr. Diane Mercer. She swiped the screen. Here is the MRI of her spine. See that? She pointed to a ghostly white line severing the spinal cord. That is a complete transection. That means the cord is cut. It means no signal gets through. It means she cannot feel, move, or fake a single thing below her waist. She swiped again, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. And here is the police report from the accident. My parents froze. Arthur and Madeline looked as if the floor had vanished beneath them. You told everyone Elena was driving recklessly, didn't you? That she was drunk? That she ruined her own life? She was, Madeline insisted, though her voice was thinner now. It was her car. She was behind the wheel when they found her. Yes, Dr. Mercer said. She was in the driver's seat when the paramedics arrived. But her injuries, the specific shatter pattern of her right humerus and the bruising on her left clavicle, are consistent with a passenger side impact. She looked at Sloane. And your injuries, Sloane? The bruised ribs on the left side, the broken right wrist. Those are driver's side injuries. The room was so quiet you could hear the wind howling against the club's glass walls. You moved her, Dr. Mercer said. It wasn't a question. You dragged your sister's broken body across the center console and shoved her into the driver's seat while her spine was unstable. No, Sloane whispered. Yes, Dr. Mercer said. But that's not even the worst part. She stepped closer to my parents. The accident happened at 11:42 p.m. The 911 call wasn't logged until 12:02 a.m. She held up 2 fingers. 20 minutes. You waited 20 minutes to call for help. I stared at her. I hadn't known this. I knew they blamed me, knew they lied, but I hadn't known about the time. Why did you wait 20 minutes, Sloane? Dr. Mercer asked. Was it to delete the text messages you were sending while driving? Was it to stage the scene? Or was it just to make sure you had your story straight? She turned back to the room. In spinal trauma, we have a concept called the golden hour. But really, it's about minutes. When the cord is compressed, swelling starts immediately. Every minute of delay kills thousands of neurons. If you had called instantly, if we had gotten her into surgery 20 minutes earlier, the swelling might not have severed the cord. She might have walked again. She let that sink in. You didn't just break her back, Sloane. You stole her legs. You stole her life. And you did it to save your own skin. My mother sat down hard on a white ottoman. My father looked like he was having a stroke. Sloane stood alone in the center of the room, her $12,000 dress suddenly looking like a costume. It was an accident, Sloane whispered. You tried to finish the job tonight, Dr. Mercer countered. Sirens cut through the mountain silence. Julian, looking hollowed out, slid the engagement ring off Sloane's finger, set it on a passing waiter's tray, and walked away. As the police cornered Sloane, my parents dropped to their knees in the wine and blood. Elena, please, Madeline begged. Tell them it was a mistake. Think of the family reputation. I am thinking of the family, I said, my voice cold. I'm thinking you owe me. You stole my legs, my career, and my dignity. I handed the phone to Mr. Sterling, my lawyer, and put it on speaker. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, we are filing charges for fraud, evidence tampering, and assault. Sloane is looking at 15 years. Unless. The room froze. Unless we make a deal, I said. I want full restitution. Liquidate the mountain estate, the investment portfolio, and the yacht. Sign it all over to me tonight, and Sloane gets a recommendation for probation. Refuse, and she goes to prison for the next 15 years. Terrified of the scandal as much as the sentence, my father signed away his entire legacy. He signed the deeds, the titles, the stocks, every scrap of the social status they had used as a shield for decades. It's done, he whispered, his hands shaking as he handed the pen back to my attorney, Mr. Hayes. Are you happy now? I'm solvent, I replied. You have 30 days to vacate the house. 6 months later, I sit in the middle of a construction site that smells of fresh sawdust and industrial chlorine. High above the entrance hangs a banner, the Mercer Adaptive Aquatic Center. I didn't spend their money on myself, I planted it. Revenge has a way of burning everything to the ground, but justice is a seed. I took the very resources they used to keep me small and built a sanctuary where broken bodies can feel weightless. Sloane took the plea deal. She now works as a hostess at a mid-tier bistro, trapped in the nightmare of being ordinary, a fate she considers worse than death. My parents are destitute and invisible, living in a cramped rental on the edge of town. I burned their last letter without breaking the seal. I have moved past the heat of hatred into the cool clarity of creation. This is the justice of the rebuilt, building a future so bright that the darkness of the past simply becomes irrelevant. I look at the empty pool, envisioning the water. My parents' vanity paid for every drop of it, but they will never set foot inside. I turn my chair toward the sun, watching the light catch the new glass of the atrium. I'm not just the girl in the wheelchair anymore. I'm the woman who built the world she needed.